Beth and Kristen trying to write a book. Wordsmith at work.
Hi, Kristen. So if I sound a little fuzzy and gross right now, I'm getting over a cold. So I'm a little stuffy headed, but cognitively mostly okay. The NyQuil has and the DayQuil has worked. But I wanted to actually make a second video. I saw your video and immediately made a response video, and I have since deleted it. I'm really glad that you weren't aware that I had already uploaded another video, but I deleted it before you could see it because I felt like it wasn't enough and it didn't say what I wanted it to say. The video I deleted said a lot of how much I love you and I adore you and I think you are awesome and wonderful and you are way, way, way too hard on yourself. And I do think all of that is very true. And I don't want to take away from that. But I also started to think about it and second guess myself and feel like I was being a little trite without meaning to, because there's a big difference between not writing because you don't want to or not writing because it's hard and not writing because you cannot. And I don't think from watching your video you're fully aware of that difference because you are being so incredibly hard on yourself and you are taking things as a personal failure that aren't. There is a difference between being able to recognize the issues that you have in writing and the blocks that you have in writing and in creating of any kind of art or even of just functioning as a human being. There's a difference between when you are having troubles because it is hard or you are creatively blocked or something like that, and when you legitimately have a condition or a impediment of some kind that is blocking you from creating art. I'm not going to talk for you because I don't feel like that is my place. But I do want to recognize that there is a big difference between not writing because you're depressed and not writing because you're sad. And just as there is a difference between being sad and being clinically depressed. But that also exists in other cases as well. I am lucky in that I have not ever been clinically depressed, but I have been in situations where I could not write. And it wasn't my fault. And at the time, I would have certainly been like, oh yeah, I'm not strong enough to do it, or I'm not good enough to do it. But in hindsight, I can see like, oh, actually, I could not physically do it. The first one I can think of is when I was writing when I was just out of college. I wrote my first novel when I was in college, and it obviously went nowhere, and so did all the rest of them. And then after I graduated, I went into the very lucrative career of public education, and I became a high school teacher. And that was the hardest job I had ever done before in my life. Now, at the same time, I still was writing. I would write on the weekends. I would write after school. I was still writing and I still wrote a book that year, but it was hard and that book was rough. And I remember there being many times when I would just be so exhausted and I would beat myself up and be like, wait, if I want to be a writer, I have to do that. But I also wanted to be a good teacher and I wanted to be there for my students. And I was burning the candle at both ends, and it was not healthy. It wasn't good. The only reason I think I could do any of it was because I didn't have a family to care for at the time. And my writing did take a hit. Like, there were many times when I was just flat out too exhausted from working the day job to be able to progress on the job that I loved, the one that I wanted. And it felt like a personal failure at the time. It felt like I wasn't good enough and I couldn't do the thing I wanted to do. And the reason why I couldn't do this thing that's supposed to be so easy and it's just sitting there and writing words is because I wasn't good enough. The reality is I was exhausted. And I've seen that again later on. I've talked a little bit about this before when my husband got really sick. That was a hard year. And it was a hard year not just because my husband was literally dying, but I also had a 5-year-old child at the time who did not understand why daddy was in the hospital for weeks at a time, who did not understand why mommy was sad all the time. who I had to help regulate his emotions and my own emotions and figure out how I was going to prolong my career that I felt like was dying, and take care of my husband who was literally dying, and handle like the family and the emotions and the art and everything. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. Now, there were times when I was able to write some, and I talked about the books that failed during that time period. The truth of the matter is, most of those were mostly written by the time I was shopping them during that time period. Writing new words during that time period did not go well. I picked up some under the table work, basically. Like, I did a pen name thing where I was just basically transcribing for a video game. I did some other like little writing like jobs that I could do, but I was not making up novels at that point in time. I was revising stuff that was already written. That's a little bit easier for my brain. I was not being creative. I was barely hanging on. And I see that here with you as well. And so I want to make a very clear distinction. And I think that's an important thing to say, not just for you, but for anybody who may be watching, that there is a difference between when you have a creative block that is just you not doing the job, versus when you have a creative block because you are exhausted or depressed, or you cannot. And it is not a personal failing if you get to a point where you cannot do something, even if you really want to do it, even if it seems like the simplest thing in the world. If you cannot do it, it's not a personal failing. It is not you being lazy, or you not having your shit together, or you not being able to process things well. Like, no, you are allowed to be broken, and you are allowed to not do the things that need to be done, even if they're things that you want to do, until you can unbreak yourself. And as I say that, I feel like I have misspoken a little bit, in that I'm not trying to say that somebody is broken in like irreparable ways, but there are times when I feel broken. And there are times when I feel like I'm so busy trying to hold the shattered pieces of myself together that I can't do the things I want to do. And that is very, 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 very different from if I just don't want to do the work, or if I really am just being lazy. And sometimes it can be hard to understand that difference. Like, when I was in it, when I was in those moments that were really dark for me, I could not tell you like, oh, I can't do it because I'm feeling this way. I would not have said it that way. Like, I have enough hindsight now and enough experience with my own life to be able to recognize that when I was in those sort of situations, I would have been like, oh yeah, I'm being lazy, or I need a nap. If I get a nap, I'll be refreshed and I can do the thing that needs to be done. And I know, because that's what I was doing. I very distinctly remember the times when I would put my child to bed in the motel where we were staying while my husband was in the hospital, and then forcing myself to get out of bed and look at the computer screen and try to write something. And I very rarely could. And I remember every time thinking, oh, I'm such a loser. I just can't do it. If I was a little bit better and a little bit more professional and a little bit whatever, I could do it. But now that I'm well past that time, I can look at that and go like, oh, I was being really hard on myself when it wasn't really my fault. Like, the world was against me at that moment. So even if you feel like it is a personal failing to not have done more, I want you to know that it's not. That if you are trying and you cannot, there's a difference between that and people who just don't even try. And I can say that as somebody who also will at times not even try. There are plenty of times when I'm like, I could work on my book, or I could watch a movie. That's me not trying. Or there are times when I'm like, I could work on my edits, or I could play around with this other story idea. That's me not trying. But if you're trying and you cannot, that means that there's something else going on. And it's not your fault, and it's not a bad thing, and you're not a bad person for not being able to get past that point. That just means you need to take time for yourself and heal for yourself. So I will be typically the first person to be like, get your butt in the chair and just do the work. Like, I'm very kind of like strategic, focused, narrow-minded person when it comes to that sort of thing. Unless you're in a survival situation, and you have been in a survival situation. And it doesn't matter how long it's been. It doesn't matter how much you feel like you should be over it. That doesn't matter. When you're in a survival situation, you're in a survival situation for as long as it takes to survive, regardless of how long you want it to take. We all wish we could get over the bad humps in our life quicker. We all wish we could just let things roll off and not be something that we worry about, but that's not how things work. And everybody has their own sort of time that it takes to get out of survival mode, and you are not accountable for what you have to do to survive. You survive first, and then once you're past that survival mode, then if you're being lazy, I'll fuss at you. And if you're being like, oh, I just don't want to do it because I don't want to, then we'll have a real talk about like, no, you can actually do it, and you're just being like difficult on your own terms. That's a different situation. So always, always, always survive first. Do not ever feel guilty for surviving. Do not ever feel guilty for doing what it takes to get through something, even if what it takes is to just do nothing but heal. And then after that, we can get together and we can work and we can make something happen. And I think that's where we are now. And I think that might be why the book that we tried to co-write several years ago, like a year after your mom died, that book, I think it failed in part because you were still surviving and you hadn't gotten through that. And I hope that you're on the tail end of that phase of your life where you can shift from survival to something more than just surviving. And I will be here on the other side.